Alright, it's time. Today, we are settling the debate once and for all. I'm ranking every single alien from the Ben 10 Classic era from the absolute worst to the undisputed best. Now, full disclaimer, this list is 100% my personal opinion. There might be some crazy takes in here, so if you don't agree with my takes, that's what the comment section is for. Drop your own top 5 down there and let's argue about it. But before we jump in, let's get one thing straight. We are ranking these aliens based on their powers, versatility, and pure coolness factor. Got it? Sit down and relax, it's gonna be a yap session. Heat Blast. The very first transformation we ever saw, and Heat Blast isn't just some random fire guy. His control over flames is actually incredibly refined and precise. He can blast fire from his palms, craft explosive fireballs to toss at enemies, and even absorb heat to put out a massive fire just as fast as he started one. My absolute favorite detail about him is the way he can melt the very ground beneath his feet so he can surf through the air on a piece of molten rock. Whether he's acting as a long-range shooter from the sky or rescuing people from a collapsing, burning building, this is the perfect alien for the job because he's completely immune to the heat. Because he was the very first alien to ever emerge from the Omnitrix, he holds a special place in our hearts and definitely deserves a high spot on this list. He's got the nostalgia, the power, and the style to remain one of the best transformations Ben has ever had. Definitely an S tier alien. Starting strong, huh? Wildmutt. Wildmutt is easily Ben's most beast-like alien, and the fact that he has no eyes and can't even speak actually makes him way more interesting to watch. But don't let the lack of eyes fool you, this alien is surprisingly lethal in combat. If you ever need to track someone down across a city, Wildmutt is the absolute best choice in the entire watch. He is much more of a wild animal than a humanoid, and honestly, that's exactly what makes his design so great and iconic. While he lacks traditional vision, his 360-degree radar-like sense of smell and hearing makes it almost impossible for any enemy to pull off a sneak attack on him. He's all about raw animalistic agility, using his razor-sharp teeth and powerful claws to rip through reinforced mechadroids like they're made of paper. He might not be the first guy you'd pick for a massive open-field brawl, but when it comes to a high-stakes search and rescue mission, there is absolutely nobody better in Ben's roster. And who doesn't like beastly aliens? Wildmutt's going in the A tier. Stinkfly. Look, I am not gonna lie, in the original Ben 10 series, Stinkfly was a straight-up badass alien. And for a long time, he was pretty much the only option if Ben needed to get airborne. But he wasn't just a transport alien, he's also got some seriously gross but effective combat moves. His standout feature is definitely that pressurized slime attack, which he can shoot with pinpoint accuracy from his eyes to immobilize enemies. And on top of all that, his tail was incredibly strong and so sharp that he could easily cut and tear through thick layers of metal like it was nothing. While some people might find his insectoid design a bit gross or creepy, I actually think his design is an amazing piece of work. Those 4 eyes aren't just for show, they give him a massive field of vision. It's not impossible to sneak up on him, but he has to be alert. Even though he isn't built for a heavy-duty fistfight and isn't the most durable alien in the watch, his mobility and battlefield control more than make up for it. He's the perfect example of how a unique design and a specific set of utility powers can make an alien iconic, even if they aren't the strongest in a brawl. I like Stinkfly, and for me, he's an easy A tier. 4 arms! 4 arms is the ultimate embodiment of raw physical power. There is no better way to describe him. With those 4 massive arms and his incredibly enhanced durability, he can punch straight through solid concrete and lift heavy vehicles like they're absolutely nothing. For a long time, this was Ben's favorite hammer. For every single problem he faced, if something needed to be broken or moved, 4 arms was the first choice. Whether we're talking about those iconic fights against Mammoth or his brutal showdowns with Kevin 11, 4 arms is always the guy Ben calls when a fight needs to end fast and hard. Pause. He's simple and easily one of the most memorable transformations in the entire history of the franchise. Now, some might say his power is limited since it's just super strength, but he got so many high stakes and memorable moments that prove just how effective he really is. Whether you look back at the 4 arms versus Apug fight, the brawl with Princess Luma, or his clash with Vilgax in the Dream, every single one of those battles was iconic and stuck with the fans for years. In my opinion, even without fancy energy beams or flight, his sheer dominance in close quarters combat and his track record for winning the toughest brawls makes him a top tier alien. Cannonbolt! Cannonbolt is easily one of the few aliens in the Watch that can be useful in literally any kind of battle you throw him into. His ability to turn into a ball might sound simple, but it is actually one of the most unique and effective abilities Ben has ever unlocked. He's the perfect package. He's incredibly strong, surprisingly fast once he gets moving, and his durability is just on another level. One of the best things about him is how he can actually save people by tucking them into his shell while he's right in the middle of a fight. After his big debut, Cannonbolt became such a staple that we saw him in almost every other episode of the classic series. And for good reason. By curling up into that signature armored sphere, Cannonbolt can smash through just about anything at extreme speeds. That thick yellow exoskeleton isn't just for show. It's tough enough to allow him to survive a literal re-entry from space without a scratch on him. Even though his powers were toned down and made to look a bit weaker in the later series, in the classic era, he was pretty much an unstoppable juggernaut. He might not have the flashiest powers, but once Cannonbolt starts rolling, he becomes a brutally effective force of nature that most villains just aren't prepared for. I can confidently say that Cannonbolt rolled his way into the A tier. Gray Matter! He's all about having a small size but a massive, world-class brain, and he has honestly won more fights by sabotaging complex machines from the inside than by actually hitting anyone. Watching Ben struggle with being a tiny frog-like alien was absolutely hilarious, but once he finally learned to tap into that incredible Galvan intellect, he became a total expert at strategic planning and problem solving. He is such a refreshing alien to have in the Watch because he forces Ben to actually stop and think his way out of a corner instead of just trying to smash things into pieces. Most of the time, Ben has to depend entirely on Gray Matter's big brain and his high-level intellect to find a clever solution to whatever impossible problem is in front of him. Because Gray Matter's size is so incredibly small, Ben often has to struggle just to navigate his regular surroundings, which makes for some of the most fun and creative scenes to watch in the whole show. Really like the design too. I hope Gray Matter fanboy wouldn't mind if I put Gray Matter into the A tier. Ghost Freak. Ghost Freak is a total nightmare for any opponent to deal with, and his ghost-like abilities give him a massive tactical advantage in almost any situation. Being able to turn completely invisible, pass through solid objects, or even possess someone's body makes him the ultimate tool for stealth and infiltration. But there is a much darker side to this alien that makes him one of the most unique transformations Ben has ever had. This specific DNA sample famously caused Ben way more trouble than it was worth, eventually revealing that it had a sinister consciousness of its own that didn't want to be controlled. However, we can't talk about Ghost Freak without mentioning his terrifying true form. When he peels back that protective skin, his power increases even more, revealing a mass of exposed tentacles and granting him access to telekinesis and powerful energy beams. It's one of the most haunting designs in the entire franchise, and even though Ghost Freak eventually got his own separate villainous arc in the series, the DNA still remains a part of Ben's arsenal. I really wanted to put him in the A tier, but sadly Ben didn't use it as much, so B tier I guess. Wildvine. Wildvine is honestly peak design, and he's easily one of the coolest aliens. His design is totally badass, his transformation sequence is great, and his plant-like abilities are just next level. He is the ultimate crowd control expert, using his limbs to stretch like massive vines to restrain multiple enemies at once. He can even swing through the environment like a plant-based Spider-Man, making him surprisingly mobile for an alien that's basically a walking garden. Wildvine can grow explosive seeds right on his back and toss them like organic grenades to blow through obstacles. Merging with local flora is a piece of cake for him, allowing him to literally disappear into the scenery for a surprise attack. He can regenerate as well, which makes him a very tricky opponent to pin down, especially if the fight takes place in a forest setting where he can use the environment to his advantage. With the help of this alien's incredible versatility, Ben has managed to save many lives several times throughout the series. Whether dragging the werewolf underground with him or using his flytrap head to shield himself, Wildvine always brings something creative to the table. Straight S tier for me. Upchuck. Upchuck's power is as weird as it is effective. He has the incredible ability to eat almost anything, whether it's solid matter or pure energy, and instantly convert it into highly explosive bile. Upchuck's greatest achievement so far was when he literally ate sub-energy, which was said to be equal to the power of 20 suns. His design is a bit of a mixed bag for me though. I'll be honest, the classic design just doesn't hit the same way the others do. While the later Alien Force and Omniverse designs look pretty fine and polished, the original classic look just feels a bit off. But regardless of how I feel about his looks, I cannot deny that Upchuck is a heavy hitter. He is basically a walking trash compactor with a trans space bladder that allows him to digest things that should be impossible to swallow. Not the best, but definitely not the worst. B tier. Ripjaws! Underwater, this alien is a total monster with the swimming speed of a high-speed torpedo and a set of jaws that can literally shred through reinforced submarine steel. He dominates the deep sea like nobody else, and his design is genuinely dangerous, making it almost impossible for an enemy to even escape safely from his clutches once they're in the water. But as soon as he hits the shore, the narrative completely changes, and that's where his biggest weakness comes into play. The problem is that all of Ripjaw's glory is strictly limited to aquatic environments. As soon as you take him out of the water, his condition instantly becomes like a gasping fish, and he requires constant hydration just to remain functional. This makes him a massive liability in almost any surface level encounter, and he's clearly not suitable at all for a long-term fight on dry ground. Because the majority of Ben's battles take place on land and not in the ocean, you can see why he doesn't get the same amount of screen time as the more versatile heavy hitters. But man, when he's actually in his element, he is terrifying to behold. As much as I like Ripjaws, unfortunately I have to put him in the C tier. XLR-8. XLR-8 is easily one of Ben's fastest aliens, and he possesses a level of speed that, honestly, who wouldn't want? He's so incredibly fast, which allows him to perform insane feats like running across the surface of water or sprinting straight up the side of a skyscraper. Whether Ben needs to do a task in a split second or travel massive distances across the globe, this alien is the perfect choice for the job. In a real fight, XLR-8 is a total nightmare for his opponents because he uses lightning-fast hit-and-run tactics. He can disarm an entire group of enemies or incapacitate them before they even realize. On top of all that utility, he just has such a great and cool design. That visor and wheel feet are iconic. Ben has saved countless lives using this alien's velocity. However, there is a catch. The main drawback for XLR-8 is that his raw physical strength and overall durability aren't very high. If an opponent actually manages to land a lucky hit or trap him, he can be harmed pretty easily. But that's usually not an issue when most of the opponents can't even see him moving. An absolute fan favorite going straight into the S tier. Blitzwolfer! Blitzwolfer's introductory episode was actually one of the most interesting moments in the entire show, but it's a shame he never really got the limelight he deserved after that. And his standout feature is easily that incredible sonic howl by literally dividing his entire muzzle into 4 separate hinged pieces and unleashing green concussive blasts of sound that are powerful enough to shatter a Petrosapien. He can even use the sheer force of those sound waves to propel himself upwards through the air, giving him a unique way to move around during a fight. On top of his long-range attacks, he is a fierce physical combatant with incredible night vision and razor-sharp claws that can carve through a thick jungle or reinforced armor with ease. Plus, he's the first additional DNA Ben unlocks by the capture mode in the series. However, even with all those cool powers and that badass aesthetic, I still find Wildmutt to be a bit more interesting because Blitzwolfer just didn't get the same amount of screen time to really cement his place in the top tier of Ben's aliens. So Blitzwolfer, aka Benwolf, is going in the C tier. Snarrow. Snarrow is essentially a living mummy made entirely of high-strength supernatural bandages, which he can use to wrap, trap, and capture opponents with incredible precision. What makes Snarrow a tactical genius is his ability to reshape his entire body at will. He can stretch his limbs over 30 feet, grapple onto distant objects, or even flatten himself out into a few thin strips to slip through tiny cracks and airtight spaces. If you really think about it, he has the potential for some incredibly creative uses in combat. He can recover from almost any injury nearly instantly. However, looking back at how Ben actually utilized him in both the classic series and Omniverse, it feels like he never truly reached his full potential on screen. He's way more interesting than Blitzwolfer for sure, so I feel like placing him a little higher in the B tier. Upgrade. Upgrade has the incredible ability to possess almost any piece of technology and completely overhaul it on the fly. Upgrade is where things truly get creative. And I don't even need to tell you just how useful a power like this is in a modern world. As a unique techno-organic being, no matter what kind of machinery is nearby, Upgrade can easily merge with it and use it to his advantage. He is arguably the most versatile alien in the entire Omnitrix, because his power is really only limited by the technology available in his current surroundings. Because so many of Ben's toughest opponents rely on high-tech weaponry or have powers related to technology themselves, Upgrade is often the smartest choice to disable their gear and defeat them effortlessly. And even if there's no tech in sight, Upgrade isn't helpless. He can still hold his own by firing a powerful, concentrated optic laser directly from his eye. Always happy to see Upgrade. My boy can't go anywhere besides the S tier. Arctiguana, the primary ice user of the original series. He can breathe out a long-range freeze ray that is so incredibly cold it can turn flowing molten lava into solid, harmless rock in a matter of seconds. Seeing him in action during the Ben 10,000 episode really showed just how powerful he can be. Fans likes him, that's cool, but I don't find him that interesting. There's nothing else going for him. No hate, but big chills better. First D tier alien, Diamond Head. Honestly, in the Ben 10 Classic era, he really does feel like a cheat code. He's essentially a living, breathing, crystalline tank. Not only is he durable enough to take a direct hit from a powerhouse like Vilgax, but he's extremely versatile as well. His track record for offense, defense, and saving people is practically unmatched. His design is just as cool as his powers, which allow him to generate and manipulate crystals into any shape he can imagine, turning his limbs into razor-sharp blades, firing off crystal shards, summoning massive spikes from the ground, and the fact that he has taken down some of Ben's biggest, most terrifying villains like Vilgax and even Malware later on proves that he isn't just another heavy hitter, but he's actually him! In my opinion, he's easily the best alien of the classic series, worthy for the S tier, no doubt. Frankenstrike! Frankenstrike is essentially a massive biomechanical tank. He uses those distinct metallic conductor coils on his back to generate intense bioelectric discharges. Now, on paper, Frankenstrike's main powers are that incredible combination of super strength and electricity, and he can use both at the exact same time to supercharge his strikes. But to be totally honest, when you compare him to the rest of the roster, he sometimes feels a little underwhelming in both categories. Ben has access to several other electric-type aliens who can manipulate electricity with much more precision, and there are strength-based aliens who can hit much harder. Especially since other transformations can often do his job with a bit more efficiency, he's kinda left behind. It needed a lot more screen time, that's all I can say. C tier, Buzz Shock. Buzz Shock is essentially a living battery, and he's easily one of the most hyper-energetic aliens. He can even travel through power lines. He is lightning fast and can duplicate himself whenever he has enough extra energy, which theoretically makes him a nightmare to pin down in a fight. Buzz Shock is a pretty decent electric alien with a solid set of powers like electrocuting enemies, giving high voltage shocks, and creating an army of clones. But here's the thing, Ben almost never actually used that duplication power shown in the original series, which is a bit of a missed opportunity. And since Ben already has access to several other electric-type aliens who are much more powerful or physically durable, Buzz Shock often feels like a backup choice rather than a go-to hero. I would have loved to see more of him though, but sadly for now, it belongs to C tier. I won't lie, there's a strong argument for him being the worst of the bunch. I know he's cute, everybody likes him and I like him as well, but cuteness can only get you so far. He can duplicate himself to handle multiple tasks at once, but in practice that power comes with a massive life-threatening catch. The clones share a complete sensory link. One clone gets hit, they all feel the pain. Even though this rule was eventually retconned in Omniverse, it doesn't change the fact that in the classic era, he just wasn't that special. He's basically just a small, squishy guy who relies entirely on overwhelming enemies through sheer numbers. To be honest, a well-trained human could probably overpower several of his clones. While it's fun to watch him argue with himself or use his numbers for slapstick-style combat, he's objectively outclassed by almost every other transformation. When you compare him to an alien like Echo, Ditto's flaws become even more obvious. He's more of a risk than an asset, and that's exactly why he sits at the bottom of this ranking. Again, I apologize if Ditto's your favorite alien. Guy, he is so underrated. With eyes covering almost his entire body, he has a true 360-degree field of vision and 0 blind spots. If Ben ever finds himself surrounded by a massive crowd of enemies, then this is the perfect alien for the situation. And let's talk about his attack power. He can fire a massive variety of elemental beams from those eyes, including searing laser beams, high voltage electric blasts, and even freezing rays that can stop a villain cold. He can even merge his smaller eyes into one massive central eye on his chest to unleash a devastatingly powerful energy beam. That kind of versatility is rare. It really is a shame that he didn't get more screen time in the original run, because he has the potential to be one of Ben's most effective fighters. If you agree that he's one of the most slept on transformations, then smash that like button. By the way, guy's going in B tier. Love him. Way Big. Way Big is the ultimate planetary scale powerhouse, the literal definition of bringing out the big guns. Standing hundreds of feet tall, he's the epitome of raw strength and the largest alien in Ben's arsenal, if we aren't counting Alien X. Because of his massive scale, he is the perfect counter for fighting other giants or defending entire cities from cosmic level threats. He casually threw Vilgax into outer space like he was tossing out the trash, beating the shit out of Kevin 11,000, which just goes to show how much of a physical beast he really is. This makes him a fan favorite and one of the most popular transformations in the franchise. He can also fire devastating cosmic rays from his hands by crossing his arms. Of course, that massive size is also his only real drawback. You can't exactly use Way Big inside a building or handle a situation in a cramped city alleyway without causing more damage than the villains. Just because of this drawback, I am putting him in the A tier, but he's still absolutely goated. Spitter! Spitter is honestly underrated, and it's wild how much power is packed into that pufferfish-like frame. His primary ability is to inflate his upper body and blast out massive amounts of slippery, high-pressure slime from his mouth. He does this with such extreme speed and force that he was able to knock back a mutated Dr. Animo, an enemy that even Ben 10,000's 4 arms was struggling to handle. Ben 10,000 uses him quite frequently in the future, which proves that as Ben gets more experienced, he realizes just how top-tier Spitter's utility actually is. I think he deserves more screen time and love, but unfortunately he's going in the last tier. So that's my tier list for the Ben 10 classic aliens. Totally my opinion, yours can be different, it's fine. Let me know your top 5 classic aliens in the comments and subscribe for more Ben 10 content.